Hey folks. So, in lieu of good feedback from the department, all of us are comparing our answers to the question papers to see what we think the memos would be, and that's all well and good, but a memo is only so helpful. I think that reasoning for those answers are just as important for studying, so what I figured I'd do is I'd take my question paper here, which has a lot of the reasoning for my answers on it. Excuse my extremely DIY recording setup. And I would run through why I answered what I did for each of them as an exercise for my own study, and hopefully this will be of some use to some people. Now, some of the reasoning on here may be incorrect. I may have gotten a false positive. I may have chosen a correct answer for an incorrect reason. What I put on here might be different to what I put on the answer sheet in the end. I don't think it is. I'm usually pretty good about keeping these things synced so I can go back to them. And I might also just be really bad at explaining things. But if we can do this in a relatively quick amount of time, hopefully it's of some use. So this is the question paper I used in the test, so it's got all of my scribbling on it, and we're gonna run through it real quick. So question one, so I think an important thing to note first is that this test was, and they don't tell you on the front, which isn't very helpful, 30 multiple choice questions, so a total of 90 marks, and I think in about as much minutes, 1 hour, 30 minutes, they say. Meaning, you've got about a minute to mark, which means you've got about 3 minutes for each of these MCQs. The first one's an easy theory question. Which the following is not an example of monopoly power? So these are in Justine's slides, the sources of monopoly power. The table mounts an aerial cableway is because it's exclusive control of the inputs of production. No one else can run a cableway to Table Mountain, right? There's one of them. Copyright on a novel, that would be like a patent. A jeweler who offers custom designs for every customer. Any jeweler can do that. The creepy trolley patent, that's also a patent. So just by process of elimination, here it has to be C. There are a couple of questions like this dotted throughout this paper, and presumably will be, and the thing I've said to a couple of people is don't overthink them. These are like 3 marks, and sometimes they seem overly simplistic, and then you doubt yourself. But if you see one of these and you can get the answer in like a minute and just move on, take the win. Which of the following statements is true? I remember being slightly unsure about this one, so let's ignore A for now and let's look at B. At unit elasticity, marginal revenue for a monopolist is positive. It's not, I think, just by definition. So if we've got a demand curve, right, unit elasticity tends to be somewhere around here, and that's actually where, so this is demand, which is thus also average revenue for a monopolist. At unit elasticity here in the middle, marginal revenue actually hits 0, right? Because we say that this is where it's not quite where the monopolist chooses to produce, but that's a fact of the model, so we can ignore that one. For a monopoly, marginal cost bisects total market demand. This I remember being my other candidate answer. Marginal revenue is marginal cost is a necessary and sufficient condition to ensure a monopolist maximizes profits. This is a matter of theory. It is a necessary condition, but it is not sufficient. So this is also emphasized in the slides. What it just means is that at any point where a monopolist is maximizing profits, marginal revenue does equal marginal costs. But that is not the only condition. So if marginal revenue equals marginal costs, that doesn't guarantee a monopolist is making profits. Mostly because if the monopolist is making profit, is going to depend on that specific firm's cost structure, right? So even if marginal revenue equals marginal costs, and marginal cost is like way off down here or something, it doesn't work. So we can rule that one out. This here is sort of a universal truth as far as the service is concerned. A monopolist always operates on the elastic part of its demand curve. That's true. We include unit elasticity in that, I believe. We always operate on this part of the demand curve. Unit elasticity is a type of elasticity, I guess. We're just ruling out operating on inelastic parts because once you're here, your marginal revenue is below 0, and that wouldn't make sense to do.
So that's why I went with A. Use the information that follows to answer questions 3 to 9. They like doing this, especially for the model questions. We start with market demand is given by P equals 36 minus 3Q. And total cost for a given firm is given by total cost equals 10 plus 6Q. Firms are identical and produce undifferentiated products. The profit maximizing equilibrium for a pure monopoly, oh, there goes my lead, would be, so pure monopoly is always pricing at MR equals MC, right? So total cost is 10 plus 6Q. If you derive this with respect to Q, you get marginal cost is just equal to 6. We've got price is 36 minus 3Q. That means that we're going to need to get marginal revenue, which you get by, it's the trick Justine showed us. So in general, if you have price in terms of demand, so this is a price in terms of quantity, this is a demand slope. If you just double that slope, you get the slope of the marginal revenue curve, so it's 36 minus 3Q, but we can also prove this the long way if we want to, right? So marginal revenue is price times quantity. We've got price, so if we multiply Q in, we get 36Q minus 3Q squared. Now, sorry, I'm so full of it. This is total revenue. If we derive total revenue with respect to Q, we get 36 minus, multiply down the 2, 6Q, 2 minus 1, 1, so 36 minus 6Q. Perfect. So now we set MC equal to MR, so 36 minus 6Q equals 6. Really hope this is correct, or it's going to be really embarrassing. Okay, it is correct. Well, let's move the 36 over, shall we? So we get negative 6Q, subtract 36 from both sides, equals negative 30. So divide both sides by negative 6, we get positive Q equals positive 5. And then we're getting the equilibrium position in terms of price and quantity. We've solved for Q, so Q equals 5. To get price, well, we can just go back to our demand function here. P equals 36 minus 3Q, so 36 minus 3 times 5, 36 minus 15 is 21. So we get P is 21 and Q is 5. That's why I've gone with C. The deadweight loss associated with this pure monopoly. I remember this being kind of annoying to calculate. So, to find deadweight loss, I'm sure someone can do this faster than me, but I did just sit and do it the long way. Deadweight loss is going to be the difference between this market at perfect competition and the market at pure monopoly. So let's first figure out the market at perfect competition, right? In perfect competition, price equals marginal cost. Marginal cost is 6. Price is 36 minus 3Q, so the highest price can be is 36 minus 3Q, so the lowest it can be is when Q is equal to 12, right, because that's when the whole thing zeroes out, is down here, and we said that was at Q is equal to 12, so this is Q, by the way. Cool. So this is our perfectly competitive equilibrium, where P equals MC at 6, which means that we are at what is Q equal to. If that's equal to 6, if P equals 6, 36 minus 3Q equals 6, so Q equals 10. And then we can work out where we are under monopoly, which is going to be some point over here, right? Because we produce, under monopoly, we produce less, and we produce at a higher price. And we said we were producing at 21,5. So the price is 21. I'm sure we can do this graphically. So, but 21,5, we produce at this point on the demand curve. So we just get this difference here as being equal to our deadweight loss. Part of me intuitively isn't happy with this, but let's work it out. So the area of this triangle is 1/2 base times height. So the base here is 5, so we get 1/2 times 5 times, we have a height of 21 minus 6 is 15. So 1/2 times 5 times 15 is 75. And that is, 3750, which is our first answer. Okay, cool. The learner index for this monopolist. Now, the learner index is just a definition, one I apparently fumbled multiple times over here. It is, it's the markup, right? So it's price minus marginal cost. Is it expressed as a portion of marginal cost? One sec. Yeah. L equals P minus MC, over P, which is also equal to 1 over the absolute value of elasticity. So, we have P, we have MC, we have P, so let's try work it out, shall we? So L equals P minus MC, so we said that price was 21. What is marginal cost? Marginal cost is 6 over P, which is 21. So we get 15 over 21. And I believe if you plug that into your calculator, it's 0.714. Page 1 done. If this monopolist successfully practices first-degree price discrimination, then consumer surplus will be 0. That's a matter of theory, right? If you're doing first-degree price discrimination, you're charging every consumer exactly what they are willing to pay. So we eliminate consumer surplus because the firm captures it all. Under a Cournot duopoly market structure, the market equilibrium P, Q would be. Now, if you know your reaction functions and the theory around Cournot, you can sit and you can take these formulas and you can calculate it. But because of the way they've sequenced these questions, you don't need to. So we've said that under pure monopoly, we're setting a price of 21 and we're producing 5 units. So I'm going to note that down. P equals 21, Q equals 5. Double check that. Yes. Under a Cournot duopoly, we always produce a bit more than we do under pure monopoly, and we charge a little less. So you can just use that fact to narrow this down to one answer. This won't always be the case, but it looks like this has been done intentionally here to give you a benefit if you can get that fact right. Again, I'm happy with this level of zoom still. So you can see I've crossed them out, but P, Q equals 16, 3.3 recurring. Okay, that meets our criteria, but no, sorry, it doesn't, because why would we produce less under a Cournot duopoly than under pure monopoly? Remember, pure monopoly is our least efficient option. This one, produce at a price of 16 and 6.67 units. Okay, that meets our criteria. It's more than we were producing and at a lower price. About this one here, we set price higher, already no, and just for interest's sake, we produce way lower, no. And here we set price higher, but produce more, also no. So it can only be B. You've saved yourself sitting and deriving those formulae. If one of the firms in the Cournot duopoly acts as a leader and announces their input decision first, then it's the same story here. This is the Stackelberg model, And under Stackelberg, we produce more than under Cornot and more than under Perfect Monopoly, and we charge a lower price than both. So you can sit here and you can work that out as well. The leader will produce 5 units and charge a price of 21. The leader will produce 2.5 units and charge a price of 28.50. The leader will produce 5 units. The follower will produce 2.5 units. Okay, so that's how they're varying it. It's a bit fuzzier than before, because remember the total amount we make is going to be the sum of the leader and the follower. So maybe there is some value in sitting and working these out specifically, but I believe you can still do this quite intuitively. The leader will produce 5 units. Okay, maybe, because that does mean that leader plus follower has to be more than 5, which is more than we're making, and we'll charge a price of 21 Rand. No. Price has to be lower, and remember, price isn't summed between leader and follower. They're both charging the same price, and that price has to be lower than 21. So it's not A. The follower will produce 2.5 units, maybe, and charge a price of 28.50. That's a price that's higher. That is also against our theory. We'll jump down to D. The follower will produce 2.5 units, again, maybe, and charge a price of 21, also no. In fact, there's only one here where the price is lower, which we know is a basic fact of the Stackelberg model, so it has to be 8C. If this market is characterized by a Bertrand duopoly, so this is our final model of duopoly, and here they're kind of just asking it explicitly. Prices will be higher than compared to a Cornot duopoly. No. Output will be lower than compared to a Cornot duopoly. No. Prices will be lower than compared to a Cornot duopoly. Yes. Output will be the same as under a Cornot duopoly. No. There's a neat little graph in one of Justine's slides, I think, where she just shows if this is our demand curve. Obviously, things are most competitive at perfect competition, but she sort of shows that the lowest produced. So if this is P and this is Q, right? Lowest produced at the highest price is pure monopoly, then Cornot, then Stackelberg, and then Bertrand is the same as at pure competition. A Nash equilibrium is always stable. It's not. Only possible when firms collude with each other? No. Always ensures that both firms enjoy equal gains from the interaction. No, that's explicitly, not a quality of a Nash equilibrium. A combination of strategies where neither firm has any incentive to do anything different. That's from ECO2003F. That's Rob's section. That is just the definition of a Nash equilibrium, so that's that one. A professional squash coach charges 150 Rand per hour for squash lessons for beginners, 250 per hour for squash lessons for competitive squash players. They are practicing markup pricing. No, well, we're not being given a markup here. First degree price discrimination. First degree price discrimination is when you have perfect information and charge everyone exactly what they're willing to pay. That's not what's happening here, because we only have 2 prices. Second degree price discrimination, that would be our tariffs, right? But she's not discriminating by quantity. So by process of elimination has to be third degree, but if we just think about it, third degree, that's multi-market price discrimination, which is what's happening here. We've got a market for beginners and a market for competitive players, and we're charging a different price at each of them because they'll value a difference. The answer is D. Okay, next up we have a multi-market question. These always look a bit more intimidating than they actually are, from what I can tell. A local airline has 2 customer segments: economy class travellers who have relatively elastic demand, and business executives who have relatively inelastic demand. This is the example we did in class 2, right? If you're flying on a business's dime, you're not going to be too fussed about what your boss is paying for you to fly. You just want it. You want the flight. So they're saying one of these 2 has relatively inelastic demand, and the other has relatively elastic demand. We can actually identify these. So here are our demand curves. So we can see this demand curve for a very high change in price. If we look at P4 and we move to P1, relatively small jump in quantity. But look at the slope of this one. For a relatively small change in price, we move way along on the quantity axis. So this side is going to be the economy class ones, and this side is going to be the business class ones. And where this business, we're asked, based on the diagram above, the airline's pricing strategies are catered to its clientele will be. We just have to get these 2 separate. The first thing that this question is actually asking you to do is to identify which demand curves are for which based on the quality we're given, and we've done that. So the price of business tickets first. Well, for a firm to maximize profit, we always have marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and we're given a constant marginal cost, which makes perfect sense. No matter which market you're selling in, the cost of an airline ticket to you, that seat on that plane is worth so much. So find where the marginal cost intersects the marginal revenue function for that side of the diagram, right? So over here, it's at Q1. Then track up to our demand function to see what price we charge, which is P1, you can label it B, because that's the price we charge for business. So already we can actually eliminate every other option because none of them have P1 as the first, but for the sake of being thorough, we'll work out the other ones. If we go track over to the economy ticket market, marginal cost is the same. If we see where it intersects with marginal revenue for this market, it's at Q3. If we track up from Q3 to where we intersect with the demand curve to see what price we charge, it's going to be P3. So our answer is P1, P3. I remember not being particularly happy with question 13. If the state wishes to regulate the price of a natural monopoly in order to improve customer welfare without causing the monopolist to shut down, it should require which of the following? If price is higher than average cost, there's no welfare for anyone. If price is below marginal cost, the monopolist shuts down. So we hit that condition, so we can rule out A and B. I wasn't sure between price equals average cost and price equals marginal cost, because that price equals average cost, in theory, the monopolist is just producing, right? In the texts, our condition for a monopolist to shut down is price falls below average cost, or I guess it's that price is above average cost, in which case that precludes this. The point is I was very close between these two. Maybe this is the question I got wrong, but I settled for C, price equals marginal cost, because we'll recognize that as the condition for a perfectly competitive market. So for sure we'll improve consumer welfare there, and price is greater than average cost, marginal cost, assuming the firm cost structure is quite traditional. So I was ultimately happy with C. The table below describes Eskom's domestic prepaid tariff structure. Use this to answer question 14. You can see I changed my mind several times over here. So we've got the tariff blocks. We've got a fixed charge of 0. Block 1, if you're buying a relatively small amount, you get this much. Block 2, a bit more. Block 3. So we are charging more with quantity. So you can see I scribbled the two possible descriptions of a block tariff here. We're on this one, right? Because as quantity rises, so does price. And the reason I went back and forth is I couldn't remember which was declining and which was inclining, which is a bit of a silly thing to get mixed up, but it happened. And I settled on, well, it has to be an inclining block tariff, because from left to right, it's inclining, right? So I said that, well, we have to have one of these answers be 3, which narrows it down to A or C. This is also an example of second-degree price discrimination. That second-degree price discrimination is like by quantity. We did these definitions earlier. First-degree price discrimination, 4 was ruled out, so it can't be 3 and 4, it's 2 and 3. So it's 14A. The table below provides information on market share for firms in 2 different sectors. Based on this information, we can conclude that. I think what they're asking here is for the HHI, the index of concentration, which is the sum of the squares of each firm's market share. So I worked that out here. So you just take 25 squared plus 10 squared plus 45 squared plus 20 squared and do the same for here. We see that this side is higher than this side. So the HHI gives us a higher level of concentration in sector 1. And they're asking you to make the distinction between competitiveness and concentration, because you can be more competitive and less concentrated, or more competitive and more concentrated, I guess. Sector 1 is more competitive than Sector 2. We actually can't tell that from this information, because we've got a measure of concentration, not of competitiveness here. Have the same level of market concentration? I mean, obviously not. D, Sector 2 is more concentrated than Sector 1. It's not. Sector 1 is more concentrated than Sector 2. It is. The HHI is higher. Cool. 15. Which market structure best describes the South African banking sector? It's oligopoly. We've got a big few, right? There's not perfect competition for sure. It's not monopoly. There's more than one. It's not duopoly. There's more than 2, so it's oligopoly. Again, don't overthink these theory questions. Just keep moving. And then, I believe we're on to Lindo's questions, so I'm going to draw a quick graph. Okay, let's get this a try. We've got marginal social cost, marginal private cost. I've just drawn generic curves. The important feature when you draw these two is generally they start closer together and they sort of diverge, right? Neither of them goes through the bottom axis because the firm's going to have fixed costs and stuff, I think. I hope that's right. Consider a firm that produces tractors with no restrictions on its production process. So property rights are in favor of the firm. The production of tractors pollutes a nearby river used by citizens for drinking water, blah, blah, blah. The firm's marginal private costs are given by MPC equals 5Q plus 50. Marginal external costs given as MEC equals 3Q. So already we can see they've given us MPC and MEC. For this model, we want MPC and MSC. MSC is just MPC plus MEC. So that is 5Q plus 50 plus 3Q. It's 8Q plus 50. Which of the following is the perfectly competitive price and the marginal social costs at this price? So the perfectly competitive price is also the Pareto inefficient price. We're told that the Pareto inefficient quantity of tractors is 40 tractors. Now, the Pareto inefficient price has the other quality of being where MPC equals price, right? So, if we just... Oh, these super aren't going to intersect. I might have to just jig this up a little. There we go. So this is price, and this is quantity. The Pareto inefficient quantity is 40 tractors. The Pareto efficient quantity, I may as well note it down so long, is 25. Which of the following is the perfectly competitive price and the marginal social costs at this price? So we're being asked for this number here. Well, we just got a formula for marginal social costs. It's 8Q plus 50. We've got Q is 40. 8 times 40 is 8, 16, 24, 32. 320 plus 50 is 370. So that's our marginal social cost, is the 370. So it's one of these two. What is the perfectly competitive price? The perfectly competitive price... That's a great question. Sorry, of course. Price, we've said, remember, equals marginal private cost at Q equals 40, and it's also a constant, so this helps us get it at scaffolding for later questions. We've got a formula for MPC. It's 5Q plus 50, so if we're saying here at the Pareto inefficient point, it's 40. 40 times 5 is 200, plus 50, it's 250. So we can actually note this down for later, that the price equals 250. What would be the total tax paid by the firm if the government imposed a Pigovian tax? Now, if the government sets a Pigovian tax, they set the per unit price equal to the difference between, at the Pareto efficient quantity, marginal social cost and marginal private cost. We've got a formula for both of these, and I just worked out earlier that 25 plugged into the marginal private cost firm gets us this value as being 75. And if you plug it into the marginal social cost, we get a 250. It's this point here. So the difference between these two is... I'm full of it again. It's 175 and 250. So the difference here is 75. That is the per unit Pigovian tax quantity. That's just a useful fact to know, as it's always this difference. But we're being asked for the total tax paid, which is the 75 multiplied across this area. So 75 times 15 equals 1125. You can see here I wasn't totally happy with this. That's what this little symbol I put on my papers means. So this could also be well where I've gotten something wrong, and I welcome dissent and corrections. What would be the net social gain if the neighbours in the firm successfully bargained over the pollution? So the net social gain is going to be this whole area here, which would be half times base times height for this triangle. So where the base is 40 minus, so it's 15 times height, which is, well, actually, what is the total marginal social cost at, what is the total social cost at 40? 40 into the MSC formula. So, if the neighbours in the firm successfully bargain down to the Pareto efficient point, the total social gain is going to be the area of this triangle. So the first thing we need to do is just get this side of the triangle. So that's MSC minus MPC. We haven't actually worked out what marginal social cost at the Pareto inefficient 40 is. If you plug it into this formula we got earlier, the 8 cubed plus 50, you'll get 370. The area of this triangle is a half times base times height. So height here, we said was MSC minus MPC. Earlier we got MPC here is 250, so 370 minus 250 equals 120. And this side here, 15. 15 times 120 times a half, if you run into a calculator, gives you 900, which is the answer I selected. If the government decides that all citizens deserve the right to clean water, and the citizens refuse to bargain with the firm about its production, what would be the Pareto inefficient quantity of tractors? This is a theory question in disguise. It's 0, right? The citizens have a total right to clean water, so the firm cannot produce any tractors, and they're refusing to bargain. So it's 0. It would be Pareto efficient if they did bargain, and then we'd actually like start somewhere over here, and we'd move up here. I'm not great with these, but let's move on. Okay, these are the questions I really didn't like. Assume the government imposes a Pigovian tax. Which of the following represents the necessary tax per unit in this situation? As I said earlier, this is a simple definition and one that's worth learning. It's the difference between the perfectly competitive price and marginal private cost at our Pareto efficient point. So we need to first get all of those points on this graph. So first things first, where's Pareto inefficient but the perfectly competitive point? That's where marginal private cost equals the perfectly competitive price, which is over here at E. So this entire side of the graph is actually a red herring because we're starting here and we're going to use a Pigovian tax and other measures to get this side. So that means that this here, where perfectly competitive price intersects with marginal social cost, is our Pareto efficient point. And the difference between the perfectly competitive price and the marginal private costs, FG, is the per unit value of the Pigovian tax. Which areas represent minimum acceptable offers if Coasian bargaining was used instead of a Pigovian tax? I'm going to be honest, this is probably the one I got wrong. So I answered FGE and HFG. I eliminated C and D as options, because remember I said this entire side of the graph, it's just here as a red herring. It's not relevant to us. So anything involving A, B, or C, we could rule out. So I ruled out that one. I wonder why D, B, and D, G, E were ruled out. D, E, B would be, sorry, because it's got B, so that one's out, yes. So we're down to F, D, E, and G, F, E, or F, G, E, and H, F, G. If we've got property rights in favor of the firms is allowed to pollute, the minimum acceptable offer to the firm would be from the neighbors, would be their lost profit, right? That's another theory fact. And that would be given by EFG. This area is lost profit. Then, if we move to things being in favor of the neighbors, and the firm wants to bargain with them to be allowed to produce up to the Pareto efficient point here, I suggested that the minimum acceptable offer would be HFG, so that's why I chose these. I said that both of these have FGE and look GFE as an option, so that's why just using this, which I'm 100% certain of, we can't eliminate between that. What it comes down to is, do you think HFG or FDE constitutes a minimum acceptable offer, and I didn't buy it being FDE because that's actually not a minimum acceptable offer ever. This area is only used when we want to work out the reservation option of the neighbors, which is the reservation option is this plus this. Sorry, or it might be the maximum worth it to the firm, whatever. The point is I wasn't happy with it being FDE, so I went with it being HFG. Assuming all necessary assumptions are met, which of the following statements are true of a Coasian bargaining framework? The outcome will be Pareto efficient, regardless of the initial assignment of property rights. That's true. We bargained to Pareto efficiency, that's the point, so I'm happy with it being I. 2. The initial assignment of property rights affects the distribution of benefits from the bargain. Yep, quite right. Government intervention, such as imposing taxes, is necessary to reduce bargaining costs. This might throw you, and I think it's meant to. This is a complete non sequitur. Government intervention is such as imposing taxes is necessary to reduce bargaining costs. These things have nothing to do with each other, so we can rule that out as just being an absurd option. And that leaves us with it only being D, 1 and 2. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Complete the following sentence such that it is true. An employer-employee interaction with asymmetric information is correctly described as a moral hazard problem caused by hidden attributes? No. An adverse selection problem caused by hidden actions? No. If it were adverse selection, it would be related to hidden attributes, and it's neither of these when we're doing employer-employee, which is a principal-agent problem. The moral hazard is involved here. Hidden attributes are not. Adverse selection and hidden attributes are linked, so it's also not adverse selection. So it's not this one either. It's a moral hazard problem caused by hidden actions, right? It's the principal agent problem from ECO2003F. Which of the following correctly describes a component of the principal agent problem? An externality due to the agent's actions that benefit the principal. This is another total non sequitur, right? When we talk about principal agent problems, we're not talking about externalities because that's like cost to society. We're actually specifically talking about costs to the principal when the agent acts in the agent's interest but not theirs, so we can rule out 1. 2. A principal's incomplete information on the attributes and or actions of the agents. Sure, I'm happy with that. An agent's production of a non-excludable good. Again, this is another absurd non sequitur. Same with 1, right? I'm not happy with either of these. It's only 2. Now, because it's only 2, there is something I notice here, which is that we're saying that the principal has incomplete information on the attributes and or actions of the agent. Now, in the event the correct interpretation of this question is with the and, not the or, and we're saying that a principal agent problem involves incomplete information on attributes, then there's a case for going back to this question and saying a moral hazard problem caused by hidden attributes. If it were hidden attributes and hidden actions, then I'd be happy with it. I just know that for a fact it's a moral hazard problem caused by hidden actions and or attributes. I'm happy with D, and I'm happy with B going with the or interpretation of this sentence. Table 1 shows the price of second-hand televisions and car insurance premiums charged to drivers. Assume that all prices are based on complete contracts and complete information. Use Table 1 to answer questions 26 and 27. These are actually nice and easy. If prices are based on complete contracts and complete information, which of the following statements regarding the car insurance premiums indicated in the table are true? The premium reflects the marginal external cost of driving, another bizarre non sequitur meant to throw you off. Let's skip B because we know it's correct. The premium is an example of a principal agent problem? No. This is principal agent is totally different. The premium is based on the hidden actions of the driver. No, the point is the premium doesn't reflect hidden things. That one also makes no sense. The premium reflects the driver's risk to the insurance company. In theory, that is what it does. We talk about where this falls apart, but this is a basic theory definition question. 27. Assume the market for lemons framework applies to both markets. So this is where anyone who would actually gain from the interaction drops out because of the hidden information and adverse selection. Which of the following would be likely predictions of the market for lemons framework if prices and premiums were based on average characteristics? So I think I worked this out on my side paper in the exam, but you work out how the average The average price of a second-hand TV is smack here in the middle. The average car insurance premium is going to be smack here. So if driver 1 knows that the premium is higher than their actual risk, then... Oh, sorry, these are the prices they've charged them, so let's see what I've done. Seller of TV 10 would remain in the market, and driver 10 would remain in the market. Sure, driver 10 is going to stay in the market because their risk is that high. Seller of TV 10, well, only the average is being paid, so they're going to drop out of the market. So it's not A. The seller of TV 10 would remain in the market. No, we just said that's not true, so we can scratch that out. The seller of TV 10 would exit the market. True. And driver 10 would exit the market. If driver 10's true risk is higher than the average insurance premium being paid, then they're going to stay in the market, whereas TV 10 is dropping out. So we can rule out C, we can go with D. And then, very nicely of them, we have 3 easy theory questions. Which of the following correctly describes the rival risk characteristic of a good? A good which can be provided to additional people at no additional cost. That's quite the opposite of a rival risk characteristic. A good that no one can prevent others from consuming. No, that's a public good. A good that some people, or rather an excludable good, that some people can prevent others from consuming. No. A good in which an additional person's consumption reduces other people's consumption. That's the point. There's rivalry over its consumption, so it's 28B. Once available to one person, a non-excludable public good is characterized by the costs of further provision and the impact of its provision on others. Which of the following statements correctly describes these characteristics of a public good? So this is the park or the street lamp example, right? Additional provision comes at additional cost, but does not reduce availability to others. It doesn't reduce availability to others, but it also doesn't come at additional cost. Comes at no additional cost, yes, but reduces availability to others, no. Additional provision comes at no additional cost, yes, and does not reduce availability to others, yes. Additional provision comes at additional cost and reduces availability to others, no, so it's C. Finally, in economics, what term describes a good that may arguably be necessary to provide to people regardless of their willingness or ability to pay? Ethical goods, basic goods, social goods, or merit goods. It's merit goods. This is like schooling, right? That's just another definition straight out of Linda's slide. So there we go. We did that in 42 minutes, which would have been good time in the exam, although I did cut off once or twice just to double check a calculation. One of those is incorrect. If someone notices which it is, please let me know. And I hope this was a good use of 42 minutes and 54 seconds of your time.